Lieutenant Caleb Hunter had never felt so alone. The battlefield on Torah 7 had been unforgiving. What had started as a routine mission for Earth's military quickly turned into a nightmare. The alien empire known as the Orcs had ambushed them with overwhelming force. Caleb had watched as his comrades fell one by one, their cries drowned out by the chaos of exploding debris. With his team lost and his ship's engines crippled, Caleb's hope had started to fade. The planet's surface was harsh and barren. There was no sign of any friendly forces, no way of getting off this hellhole. It wasn't just the pain from his wounded leg that was keeping him down. It was the overwhelming feeling that death was now a certainty. He limped through the rocky terrain, clutching his rifle with the last bit of strength he had left. His leg was swollen, and the constant throb in his head made it hard to focus. The sun, a fierce red ball in the sky, beat down on him relentlessly, as if nature itself wanted to erase any trace of him. Caleb's thoughts began to wander, his mind clouded with exhaustion. What had happened to Earth? Were they even aware of his team's disappearance? Was anyone coming to save them? But before he could dwell on it further, something unusual happened. A flash of light, so bright it nearly blinded him, cut through the haze of the sky. He instinctively dropped to the ground, his heart racing. Was it another attack from the Archons? His fingers clenched around his rifle, but the light wasn't from an explosion or laser fire. It was too smooth, too controlled. And then the sound of an engine, a ship's engine, roared from above. Caleb looked up, squinting through the pain and dust. He saw it then. A ship, sleek and elegant, cutting through the clouds. Its design was unlike any military vessel he had seen before. Its hull gleamed with a strange silvery blue glow, and its engines hummed with an almost melodic sound. It was no Archon ship. He tried to stand, but the pain in his leg was too much. He gritted his teeth, hoping against hope that whoever it was, they weren't here to finish him off. The ship descended slowly, its thrusters gently easing it toward the surface. Caleb's mind raced. Was this a rescue, or just another trap? The ship landed with a soft thud, and the ramp slowly lowered. Caleb's breath hitched as a figure appeared in the doorway. She was tall and commanding, her presence radiating power. Her skin was a deep shade of green, and her eyes, striking and golden, shone with an intensity that sent a chill through him. She wore a uniform that was practical, but with ornate designs, indicative of her high rank. This wasn't a soldier. This was someone important. "Are you the one they call Caleb Hunter?" The woman's voice was deep and calm, yet there was an undeniable edge to it. It carried authority, but also something else, something warmer, almost comforting. Caleb, too stunned to speak, simply nodded, his mind trying to make sense of what was happening. The woman, alien, definitely, stepped forward, her movements smooth, almost graceful. As she approached, Caleb could feel an undeniable force in the air. Her gaze didn't waver, as if she could see straight through him. "I am Captain Lyra of the Vartash Empire," she said, offering him a hand. "You're lucky I found you, human." I didn't expect." Caleb's voice was hoarse, his words faltering. He couldn't remember the last time he had spoken to anyone, let alone an alien. Lyra's eyes softened, and there was something almost compassionate in her expression. "It's not luck," she said, her tone gentle now. "The Vartash don't rely on luck. We rely on destiny." Caleb's confusion deepened. What did she mean by destiny? Before he could ask, Captain Lyra's hand moved swiftly, pulling him into her grasp with surprising strength. "You're injured. We need to get you on board." She didn't wait for a response before turning and guiding him toward the ramp of her ship. Caleb stumbled, but the pain in his leg seemed to dull slightly as she supported him with ease. "I didn't ask for this," Caleb mumbled, his thoughts still muddled. "I didn't ask for anyone to save me. I'm not even sure why you're here. Perhaps I'm here because I was meant to be, Lyra replied simply, her eyes focused ahead. You see, human, the Vartash do not save lives without reason. As they entered the ship, Caleb felt an odd sensation wash over him. The interior of the vessel was unlike anything he had seen before, sleek, futuristic, yet ancient. The walls shimmered with a strange energy, and the air seemed to hum with life. It felt alive, as if the ship itself were aware of its occupants. Caleb was seated on a soft cushion as Lyra moved to a console nearby, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. He glanced at her in confusion. What is this place? What's going on? Lyra turned to him, her golden eyes locking with his. You're aboard a Vartash ship now, Lieutenant Hunter. You were dying when I found you. My people. We don't allow that to happen. But there is something else. Caleb felt a shiver run down his spine. Something else, he asked. The Vartash believe in bonds, Lyra said, her voice becoming more serious. When one of our people saves a life, they are bound to that person forever. You and I are bound now. Your fate is tied to mine. Caleb blinked, trying to process her words. What does that mean? Bound. It means that your life is now connected to mine, she explained, in ways you cannot yet understand. A deep silence fell over them. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at Captain Lyra. He was grateful, yes, but this was something entirely different. Something he couldn't quite grasp. He had just been saved, but he had no idea what he was now walking into. The hum of the ship's engines faded as the ship began to lift off the surface of the planet. Lyra's gaze didn't leave him, and Caleb could feel that pull. Something more than just gratitude. It was like an invisible thread tying them together. I will teach you. Lyra's voice broke the silence. What it means to be bound by destiny, Caleb Hunter. But for now, you need rest. Caleb's mind raced as he leaned back against the soft seat, trying to make sense of everything. He had been saved by an alien captain from a powerful empire, and now his life was somehow connected to hers. He didn't know what it meant yet, but one thing was certain. His life had changed, forever. And somehow, deep down, Caleb knew that whatever was coming next, it would be unlike anything he had ever experienced before. The days that followed Caleb's rescue were nothing like anything he had ever experienced. He spent his time aboard the sleek Vartash ship, resting and recovering, though his mind was far from at ease. Captain Lyra's words about being bound, to her echoed in his thoughts. The word itself was heavy, like a weight pressing down on him, and he couldn't help but wonder what it truly meant. Caleb was accustomed to being on his own. He had trained for this kind of life, the life of a soldier. He had always known how to rely on himself, how to make decisions for himself. But now, in the heart of an alien ship, surrounded by strange technology and even stranger company, the ground beneath him felt uncertain. He had been saved by a woman whose people were not of Earth, and this strange connection she spoke of, this bond, was something far beyond his understanding. Every time he looked at Lyra, he felt the pull, the way her gaze seemed to draw him in as though there was no escape. The idea that his life was now tied to hers made him uneasy, but there was no denying the feeling. It was as if their destinies had merged in a way he could neither resist nor comprehend. As the ship traveled through the stars, Lyra kept her distance, but Caleb could always feel her presence nearby. She was not cold or distant, but her eyes seemed to hold secrets, something more than just the surface of her beauty. It wasn't until a week had passed that she finally approached him, sitting across from him in the ship's quiet lounge. Caleb had been staring out the window at the vast, empty void of space, his thoughts drifting like the stars outside. You've been asking yourself many questions, haven't you? Lyra's voice broke the silence, smooth and steady, yet somehow knowing. Caleb turned to her, surprised that she had read his mind so easily. "I don't even know where to start," he replied. His voice was raw, like a man who had lived through too much but still hadn't learned how to speak about it. "I don't understand what's happening. What does it mean, this bond?" Lyra sat back, her eyes focused on him as though searching for something in his gaze. "The Vartash Code is simple, Lieutenant. We believe that when one of our kind saves another's life, their souls become intertwined. It is a vow of protection, of loyalty, and it is not to be broken. You are not just a person to be saved. You are now a part of my destiny, and I am now a part of yours." Caleb's brow furrowed as he listened, trying to make sense of it. "So, you're saying that you saved me, and now I'm tied to you, like some bond that I can't break?" Lyra nodded, her expression unwavering. "That is the essence of it, yes. It is more than a duty, Lieutenant. It is a responsibility we carry, one that transcends simple survival. We are now connected in ways that will affect both of us, for better or for worse." Caleb leaned forward, his mind racing. "And what happens if I don't want this? If I don't want to be part of this bond?" For the first time, Lyra's face softened slightly. "You do not get to choose, Caleb. This is not about what you want. It is about what is necessary, what is fated. You were dying when I found you, and now that I've saved you, you are bound to me. It is not something we choose. It is something that chooses us." The weight of her words sank in. It wasn't something he could walk away from. Not now. He had already been claimed by this bond, whether he wanted it or not. But there was something else in Lyra's eyes, something deeper that Caleb couldn't quite place. It was a sense of duty, yes, but also something more personal, something that felt like a quiet strength, as if she was offering him more than just protection. It made him wonder about her, what kind of leader she was, what kind of person she had to be to carry the weight of such a responsibility. Before he could ask more, Lyra stood, her movements graceful and purposeful. "You will have time to understand," she said, turning towards the door. "But there is much more at stake than just our bond, Caleb. I have already promised to protect you, but you must understand that the war is far from over. The Archons, the ones who attacked your people, will stop at nothing to see us fall. We must be ready." Caleb stood, his mind still spinning, but something inside him sparked. Despite his confusion, despite his lack of control over the situation, he couldn't ignore the feeling deep within him. He was alive because of Lyra. And as much as he didn't fully understand this bond, he couldn't help but feel that he owed her more than just gratitude. He owed her everything. The next few days passed in a blur of training and preparation. Caleb, still recovering from his injuries, spent his time learning about the Vartash. He trained with the ship's crew, learning their techniques, their strategies, and their way of life. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Their technology advanced beyond Earth's capabilities, their tactics a mix of precision and honor. But it wasn't just the ship's crew that Caleb was drawn to. It was Captain Lyra herself. Her leadership was undeniable. The way she carried herself, strong yet compassionate. She was not just a commander, but a symbol of hope for her people. It became clear to Caleb that she was more than just the captain of this ship. She was a living embodiment of the Vartash Code. She lived for the mission, for the survival of her people. And now for him, though he was still struggling to understand why. One evening, after a long day of training, Caleb found himself in the ship's lounge again, gazing out into the vastness of space. He had become accustomed to the silence, But it was a different kind of silence now, one that felt less empty and more companionable. Lyra entered, as graceful as ever, and approached him. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "What's on your mind?" Caleb hesitated, unsure of how to put his thoughts into words. I don't know what to make of all of this," he confessed. "This bond, this war, and you. I'm not used to being tied to someone else. I've always fought alone." Lyra's gaze softened. "You do not have to fight alone anymore, Caleb. Not if you choose not to. You are not just a soldier in this war. You are a part of something greater now, and so am I." For the first time, Caleb understood what she meant. He wasn't alone anymore, not in the way he had always been. He had been brought into something much larger than himself. And whether he was ready or not, he was now tied to Captain Lyra, forever. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, Caleb's heart began to shift. This bond, this strange connection, wasn't just a burden, it was a chance to be part of something greater. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was a chance to understand the meaning of loyalty, of fate, and of the woman who had saved his life. Caleb stood on the bridge of the Vartash ship, staring out into the blackness of space. The view was breathtaking, as stars twinkled like distant diamonds against the vast emptiness. But despite the beauty, Caleb felt a constant pressure weighing down on him, a sense of unease that he couldn't shake. The bond with Captain Lyra had not only connected their fates, it had placed him in the heart of a war he hadn't fully prepared for. For the past few weeks, Caleb had been training with the Vartash crew, learning their tactics, their combat techniques, and the unique ways they fought. The Vartash were skilled warriors, with an ancient history that was steeped in both honor and survival. Their battle strategies were unlike anything Caleb had encountered before. They didn't rely on brute force. Instead, they used precision, stealth, and intelligence to outsmart their enemies. Despite all his training, Caleb felt like a stranger in a foreign land. He had always fought with Earth's military, relying on what he knew best: conventional tactics, heavy artillery, and the power of sheer numbers. But the Vartash were different. They didn't just fight to win. They fought to preserve the balance of the universe, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As Caleb learned more about the Vartash, he began to understand why Captain Lyra had acted as she did. She wasn't just a leader, she was a protector. Her people were warriors, but they fought with a sense of purpose that Caleb couldn't fully grasp. Their mission was not just survival. It was about maintaining peace in a galaxy constantly on the brink of destruction. The Archons, their enemies, were a relentless, expansionist force that showed no mercy. They saw the Vartash as a threat and had been waging war against them for years. But their war wasn't just about land or power, it was about domination. They wanted to control every corner of the galaxy, to crush anyone who stood in their way. And now, with Caleb and Captain Lyra's bond in place, Caleb had become part of the Vartash's struggle. The enemy wasn't just on the battlefield now. They were part of his world, too. Captain Lyra had been patient with him, teaching him their ways, explaining their strategy. But the weight of it all was starting to sink in. He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for something much larger. As he spent more time with Lyra, he began to understand that this was more than just a war. It was a fight for the future of every living being in the galaxy. One evening, as they were preparing for another mission, Caleb found himself once again alone in the observation deck. The stars were spread out before him like a sea of endless possibilities. It was hard to believe that just weeks ago he had been stranded on Torah 7, thinking he would never see Earth again. Now he was aboard a Vartash ship, bonded to a powerful alien captain and preparing for war. He didn't know how it had happened or why, but there was no going back now. He was part of this fight, whether he was ready or not. Earth's soldiers are brave, but they fight with their fists." Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. Caleb turned to see her standing in the doorway, her eyes locked on him. "We fight with our minds, Caleb. The battle is won not just through strength, but through understanding. You must learn to think like we do." She stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "I know you're struggling. You're used to a different kind of war, a different way of fighting. But here it's not just about firing weapons. It's about knowing when to strike, when to hold back. It's about using your enemy's weaknesses against them." Caleb nodded, though his mind was still racing. "I get it. I'm just not sure I'm cut out for this." Lyra's golden eyes softened. "You are more than capable, Caleb. You've already proven that by surviving, and you'll prove it again on the battlefield." Her confidence in him was clear, and yet Caleb couldn't shake the doubts that lingered in the back of his mind. The bond between them was still new, and although he had come to rely on her in ways he never expected, he wasn't sure he was ready to take on this kind of war. That night, the ship received word that a fleet of Arkan ships was approaching their position. It was a raid, a direct attack on the Vartash stronghold. The warning came too late to prepare for a full defense. The Vartash had no choice but to meet the enemy head-on. The ship's alarms blared and the crew rushed to their stations. Caleb's heart raced, the familiar tension of battle settling in his chest. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew this would be his first real test. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about fighting for something greater than himself. Lyra appeared at his side, her voice steady as always. "Prepare yourself, Caleb. This is not just a fight for survival. This is a fight for everything we hold dear." The enemy fleet appeared on the horizon, a massive collection of dark ships, each one brimming with weapons and soldiers. The Arkans had come with everything they had. They were determined to crush the Vartash once and for all. The ship's weapons powered up, and the crew took their positions. Caleb stood next to Lyra in the command center, his hand gripping the console tightly. He had trained for this moment, but now, with the battle unfolding before him, everything felt different. His life wasn't just his own anymore. It was connected to Lyra's, to the fate of the Vartash. As the first shots were fired, the ship rocked violently. Caleb held his ground, watching as Lyra's crew fired back with precision. The Vartash were outnumbered, but they fought with a calm that Caleb admired. It was like they had trained for this moment their entire lives, and they knew exactly what needed to be done. Caleb followed Lyra's lead, using his new skills to coordinate with the crew, to assist in their defense. The battle raged for hours, the ships weaving through the stars, exchanging fire and avoiding the deadly blasts from the Archons. Caleb's heart raced, but he kept his focus. He was no longer just a soldier. He was part of something much larger now, something he couldn't ignore. As the battle finally began to shift in their favor, Caleb felt a strange sense of relief. They had survived, but he knew that this was just the beginning. The Arkans would not stop. Not until they had destroyed everything the Vartash stood for. And Caleb, whether he was ready or not, would fight by Lyra's side until the very end. He had been saved by her, and now he would fight for her, for the Vartash, for the future. The days following the battle were filled with tension. While the Vartash had repelled the Archon attack, Caleb knew that this victory was only temporary. The Arkans were relentless, and the Vartash had enemies everywhere. But something else was bothering him, something deeper. Captain Lyra, though confident and calm on the outside, seemed to be hiding something. Caleb had noticed the change in her demeanor since the battle. She was quieter now, more reserved. He had seen her leadership, her strength, but there were moments when her eyes seemed distant, as if she was lost in thought or burdened by something he couldn't understand. One evening, Caleb found himself standing alone in the ship's observatory. staring out at the endless void of space. The stars were vast, cold, and distant, much like the feelings Caleb had started to wrestle with inside. He was beginning to accept the bond between himself and Lyra, but it was hard. He was a soldier, used to being on his own, and now his fate was tied to hers. He hadn't fully understood the implications of their connection until now. The Vartash had been a people of honor, yet this bond didn't feel like honor. It felt like an invisible weight that pressed down on him every moment of the day. It wasn't that he didn't care for Lyra. He did. She had saved his life, and he had promised to fight by her side. But there was more to the bond than just protection. He knew it now. It was something deeper, something more. As he stood there, contemplating his thoughts, Lyra entered the observatory. Her steps were soft, almost silent, but Caleb still heard them. She wasn't wearing her usual commanding armor. Instead, she wore a simple outfit that reflected her status, but also her true self. A captain who was more than just a leader. She was a person, with emotions and secrets of her own. "Caleb," she said softly, her golden eyes watching him intently. "You've been distant." Caleb turned, slightly startled, but quickly recovered. "I'm just thinking," he said, avoiding her gaze, "about everything that's happened, about this war, about us." Lyra stepped closer, her gaze never wavering. "I understand," she said quietly. "The bond is not something you can just accept overnight. But it's more than just a connection between us, Caleb. It's a part of who we are now, a part of our destiny." Caleb looked at her, finally meeting her eyes. "Destiny?" he repeated. "Is that what this is? Destiny?" Lyra nodded slowly, her face serious. "Yes, you were saved for a reason, Caleb, and I saved you for a reason too. The Vartash have a code, one that has been passed down for generations. It is not just about saving lives. It is about ensuring the survival of the universe itself." Caleb frowned, confused. "Survival of the universe? What do you mean?" Lyra paused, her eyes growing distant for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost like a whisper. "The Vartash were once guardians of an ancient power, a power that could shape the fate of galaxies. This power was entrusted to our people long ago, but with the rise of the Archons, the power has been lost. Or so we thought." Caleb's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of power?" "The kind that could change everything," Lyra said. "The Archons have been searching for it for years. They believe that if they control it, they can dominate the entire galaxy, but they don't know what it really is. They don't understand its true potential." Caleb stared at her, trying to absorb her words. "So, this power, it's why they've been attacking your people?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, the Vartash have been fighting them for years, trying to protect the artifact. The bond between us, Caleb, is more than just a fate we share. It is the key to unlocking that power." Caleb's mind raced. "So, you saved me because of this power?" "No," Lyra replied quickly. "I saved you because your life and mine are connected now. You are part of the Vartash's future, part of the reason we are still fighting. But you're also the key to finding the artifact. And that, Caleb, is why you are bound to me." Caleb stepped back, his mind whirling. "You're telling me I'm involved in this because I... what? Have some connection to this artifact?" Lyra's eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "Yes. The bond between us is not just emotional, it's physical too. The artifact was designed to respond to the energies of those who are connected in such a way. The reason I saved you Why our fates are linked is because we share the same energy, the same essence. You and I, Caleb, are meant to find the artifact together. Caleb shook his head in disbelief. This is too much. I don't know anything about artifacts or ancient powers. I'm just a soldier. Lyra reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. You are more than that now. You were chosen. For this, Caleb, we both were. The Vartash have fought to protect this power for centuries, and now with the Archons closing in, we need to find it before they do. Because if they succeed, it will be the end of everything we know. The weight of her words settled heavily on Caleb's chest. He had never imagined he would be thrust into something so monumental. He was just a man from Earth, thrust into a war that spanned galaxies, tied to an alien captain whose people had been fighting for survival for generations. But now, it seemed that his fate, his very existence, was tied to Lyra's. And through that bond, they would find the artifact. Together. Where do we start? Caleb asked, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. Lyra looked at him, a flicker of determination in her eyes. We start by preparing for what's to come. The Archons are closer than we realize. And once they learn of the artifact's true power, there will be no stopping them. We have no choice. But to find it first, Caleb nodded. He had no idea how they would find this artifact, or how he, an ordinary soldier, was supposed to help Lyra unlock its power. But one thing was clear. He wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game anymore. He was part of something far greater. He was part of this war, part of the Vartash, and now, more than ever, part of Lyra. The days following Lyra's revelation were filled with uncertainty. Caleb's world had been turned upside down. What had started as a simple mission, a rescue, had transformed into something he could barely comprehend. He was no longer just a soldier. He was part of something far greater, something that would shape the future of the galaxy. As he stood on the deck of the Vartash ship, gazing out into the vast expanse of space, Caleb's mind struggled to process everything that had been thrown at him. The artifact, the bond, the war. It was as though every decision he had made up until now had led him to this point, but the weight of it all felt suffocating. The Vartash had been at war with the Archons for centuries, trying to protect an ancient power that could change the fate of the galaxy. Now Caleb was bound to Captain Lyra, his fate forever tied to hers. He had been chosen, but why? What made him the key to finding the artifact? It was all too much. Lyra had been patient with him, but Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. She had saved his life. But what had she sacrificed to get him here? What was it that drove her to fight so fiercely? It wasn't just about the Vartash, it was about something deeper, something personal. Caleb's thoughts were interrupted when Lyra entered the room, her presence as commanding as ever. She had been working tirelessly, preparing for the next phase of their mission. They had to find the artifact before the Archons did, but time was running out. Caleb, she said, her voice steady but with a hint of urgency. We need to talk. He turned to face her, his heart pounding. What's going on? He asked, his voice low. We've received word from our scouts, Lyra began, her expression hardening. The Archons have found a lead. They're getting closer to the artifact. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine. He had known the Archons were dangerous, but this was different. What do we do? He asked, stepping forward. We don't have much time, Lyra replied. We need to move quickly. The artifact is hidden on a remote planet, deep within Archon-controlled territory. We can't risk waiting any longer. If they get to it first, it will be the end of everything we've fought for. Caleb swallowed hard, the weight of the situation settling in his chest. This was it. This was the moment he had been dreading. The war wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about the future of the galaxy, and he was a part of it. He couldn't run away from that responsibility, no matter how much he wanted to. Lyra's gaze softened for a moment, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know this isn't easy for you, Caleb," she said quietly, "but I need you now more than ever. We've come this far together, and I believe in you." Caleb looked into her eyes, seeing the sincerity in her expression. He had seen her fight, had watched her lead with strength and honor, but now he saw something more. He saw the weight of everything she had sacrificed. She wasn't just a captain. She was a woman carrying the burden of a galaxy on her shoulders. "I'm with you, Lyra," Caleb said, his voice firm. "We'll find the artifact, together." Lyra nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Together," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. The crew of the Vartash ship worked tirelessly to ready the vessel for their journey to the remote planet. Caleb, despite his growing anxiety, knew that this was their only chance. He couldn't afford to fail, not when so much was at stake. As the ship powered up and left the safety of the Vartash stronghold, Caleb couldn't help but feel a sense of unease settle over him. The unknown was ahead, and with it, the looming threat of the Archons. But it wasn't just the enemy that haunted him. It was the bond between him and Lyra. The connection between them was undeniable, but Caleb still didn't fully understand it. He could feel her presence wherever he went, as if she was always there, guiding him, watching over him. It was comforting, but it was also suffocating. It was a bond that he had never asked for, yet now he couldn't imagine being without it. As the ship soared through the stars, Caleb found himself once again in the observatory, staring out into the vastness of space. It was a quiet moment, one where he could gather his thoughts before the chaos of the mission began. Lyra joined him a few moments later, her footsteps soft against the floor. She stood beside him, her gaze focused on the stars. "Do you ever wonder, Caleb, why we're here?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with an underlying strength. Caleb glanced at her, sensing the depth of her question. "All the time," he admitted. "I never thought I'd be part of something like this, but now I am. And I'm not sure I can turn back." Lyra smiled slightly, her gaze distant. "Neither can I," she said. "But I believe that we're here for a reason. We've been chosen to protect something greater than ourselves, and together, we can do it." Caleb nodded, his thoughts swirling. He had been thrust into this war, this bond, without warning, but now, as they traveled toward the unknown, he could see the truth in her words. They were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere with a gentle shake. Caleb felt the familiar tension in his chest as the mission began in earnest. They had arrived at the planet, the one place that could hold the key to the galaxy's future. As the ship descended toward the surface, Lyra's voice came through the intercom. "Prepare yourselves. We don't know what's waiting for us down there. Stay sharp and follow my lead." Caleb strapped on his armor, his heart racing. He had fought in many battles, but this felt different. This wasn't just another fight. This was their last chance. He was no longer just a soldier. He was part of a team bound by fate, by a bond that had brought him here. And as the ship touched down on the dusty, barren surface of the planet, Caleb knew that everything he had worked for, everything he had fought for, was about to come to a head. The Archons were close, the artifact was close, and the weight of forever hung heavy on his shoulders. The planet was barren. The winds whipped across the surface, carrying with them the scent of dust and forgotten ruins. Caleb stood at the foot of the Vartash ship, looking out over the desolate landscape. His heart raced with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. They had arrived, but they were far from alone. The Archons were close, and Caleb knew that time was running out. Lyra had given the order to move out. The crew of the Vartash ship had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Their objective was clear: find the artifact, protect it from the Archons, and ensure that it remained safe. It was a mission that would determine the fate of the galaxy, and Caleb was at the center of it. The bond between him and Lyra felt heavier than ever before. The connection they shared had become more than just an obligation. It was a part of who they were now. The energy between them pulsed, guiding Caleb through every step of this mission. He had come to rely on it, though it still felt strange, like something he hadn't fully learned to control. As Caleb followed Lyra through the ruins of what had once been a thriving city, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the task ahead. They were here to find an artifact, an ancient power that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. But the deeper they went into the ruins, the more Caleb began to question whether they were truly ready for what they would find. "This place feels like it's been abandoned for centuries," Caleb remarked, his voice breaking the silence. Lyra glanced back at him, her face calm but focused. "It has. The Vartash have kept it hidden, but the Archons have been searching for it. They think it's just a weapon, something to help them dominate the galaxy, but they don't understand its true power." Caleb looked around at the crumbling buildings and shattered walls. "What exactly is this artifact?" he asked. "What makes it so dangerous?" Lyra stopped and turned to face him. Her golden eyes were intense, her gaze unwavering. "The artifact is more than just a weapon, Caleb. It's a piece of the ancient energy that powers the universe itself. The Vartash were once its guardians, but over time it was lost. If the Archons find it, they will use it to control everything." Caleb felt a shiver run down his spine. "So, this isn't just about stopping a war. This is about preventing the entire galaxy from falling under their rule." "Exactly," Lyra said, her voice steady. "The Vartash have fought to protect this power for centuries, and now we are the last line of defense." As they continued their journey through the ruins, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. The ruins seemed to be alive with memories of battles fought, of lives lost. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He had been in enough dangerous situations to know when something was off, and this place had an eerie feeling to it. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the ruins. Caleb instinctively reached for his weapon, his heart pounding. He knew that sound. The Archons had found them. Lyra raised her hand, signaling for the crew to hold their positions. The sound of heavy footsteps grew louder as the enemy soldiers approached. Caleb could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of the battle to come. He glanced at Lyra, who was calm, as always, but there was something in her eyes that told him this fight would be different. This wasn't just another battle. This was the final stand. "They're coming," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had fought for. "Stay close. We can't let them get their hands on the artifact." As the Archons rounded the corner, Caleb saw them. Their armor was black and sleek, their weapons deadly. There were at least a dozen of them, armed to the teeth. And they were closing in fast. "Hold your fire," Lyra commanded. "Wait for my signal." Caleb's grip on his weapon tightened. His heart was pounding in his chest, but he trusted Lyra. He had to. She had led them through every challenge they had faced so far, and she would lead them through this one, too. The Archons came closer, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the ruins. Caleb's mind raced as he prepared himself for the fight. He had been trained for moments like this, but the stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just about survival. It was about something far greater. Lyra's hand shot up, and in an instant, the Vartash crew opened fire. The battle erupted in a blur of motion, the crack of weapons filling the air as the two sides clashed. Caleb moved with precision, his training kicking in as he fought alongside Lyra and the Vartash crew. They were outnumbered, but they were faster, more precise. Every move they made was calculated, every shot taken with purpose. The Archons fought back fiercely, but they were no match for the Vartash. As the battle raged on, Caleb's eyes never left Lyra. She was a force of nature, her movements fluid and controlled as she took down enemy after enemy. He could feel the energy between them, the bond that tied them together, pushing him forward. For a moment, it seemed like they were winning. The Archons were retreating, their forces thinning as they fell back. But just as Caleb thought they had the upper hand, a massive explosion shook the ground beneath them. The force of it knocked him off his feet, sending him crashing to the ground. Pain exploded in his side, and for a moment, everything went black. When Caleb came to, he found himself lying on the cold, cracked floor of the ruins. His head throbbed, and his vision was blurry. He tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. Panic surged through him. Was it over? Had they lost? But then, through the haze of his pain, he heard her voice. "Caleb." Lyra's voice was calm, yet urgent. She was kneeling beside him, her hands moving quickly to check his injuries. "Stay with me. We're not done yet." Caleb's mind cleared as he focused on her. He could feel the bond between them, a force stronger than anything he had ever known. He wasn't alone. He never would be again. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Lyra's eyes met his, her expression softening. "We're bound, Caleb. No matter what happens, we're in this together." With that, Lyra helped him to his feet, and together, they moved toward the heart of the ruins. The battle was far from over, but Caleb knew that they could face anything, together. They had fought for so long, and now, they were closer than ever to finding the artifact. The future of the galaxy rested in their hands, and they would not fail. They were bound forever, but in that bond they had found freedom. The freedom to fight for what was right, the freedom to protect those they loved. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Caleb knew that together they would face them all.